How are you doing, Caleb
I'm
and Bishop?
I'm doing good. How are you
Good.
doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Doing well. Hate I missed last week. Y'all always show such good music.
I forgot who I showed last week. Caleb, didn't you show something?
Yeah, I'm kind of ashamed of it because I hate, most everything about it. But well, I say most everything. I just hate the lyrics. That's all. I'm just not a good lyricist. I need to get over that.
Yeah, me either. Lyrics has always been my downfall.
Just, but I have a better idea of what I want now. So hopefully I can, get that
Hmm.
smoothed out. I showed the,
Yeah.
yeah.
It seems to me that if you're really inspired, you can write good lyrics, even if it's only every now and then.
I, I guess I've never been inspired then.
I think the key to it is having strong feelings about something and being in touch with how you feel about it. And I've just never been good at that.
Not at all. Never.
Yeah, my thing has always been don't have an opinion. Stay out of trouble.
You must be an excellent husband.
Well, I've got two people that would disagree with you. One that would.
Having an opinion gets me in trouble in my own house.
Yeah, yeah, it's but for me it goes further back than that. Uh, uh, Elementary school was not fun for me. There were a lot of mean kids in Mount Holly that you just kind of wanted to be invisible around. You didn't want to become a target. So it's funny how all these things shape us into who we are.
Carter said he's going to be like 10 minutes late, so I'll start the meeting whenever we're ready. Once everybody gets in here.
Caleb, did I send you the link to the last week's video or no?
I was looking at it for it today. I don't think he ever did. That's okay. I probably wouldn't got around to publishing yet, anyways.
So
To be
I'll just say
honest.
I did, and you just didn't publish it yet, and
Yeah, sure.
I'll resend it just in case.
Just in case, yeah. Do that. I actually need to do that. Publish that video Aaron sent too, which I haven't gotten to. So I'm gonna try to get that this afternoon. I've got nothing to do this afternoon after this.
We'll make that a good
I'll
deal
try
this
to-
afternoon.
Try to get those done this afternoon. I guess this evening is probably a better way to say it. It's already 4 o'clock. Is there any hard rule on afternoon and evening? I don't know.
Something that we talked about a while back about feedback in Zoom. I actually got to play with that a little bit. I had two iPads and a computer up in the church sanctuary and was feeding the sound through the system. And you put all that echo in a big room and you can get some wild effects.
Copyright it. Put it on Spotify or on your YouTube channel to get those sounds. They're your sounds.
Yeah, it's well worth playing with. You could like you could do something like that and it will build this swirling chord.
Roger, did you ever get into a modernist experimental composer by the name of Robert Ashley? Have you ever
Never heard
heard
of him.
Never heard of this guy? Um, uh, in the 50s, maybe 60s, maybe late 50s, early 60s. Anyway, British guy,
Mhm.
and one of the pieces I remember specifically that he is famous for is a piece called "The Wolf Man," and it's him holding his guitar. He's kind of a rock band-ish, but more of a
Mhm.
composer than rock band. And he's holding his guitar and getting the feedback of the guitar, recording the feedback, playing the feedback back, recording that, playing that back, and just doing this in a cycle. And so his concerts are like these 45, 50-minute long build of how much can you get the sound to grow with just itself with this feedback loop. And so it's this ever bigger feedback loop, and people just go crazy at his concerts uh, with with feedback loop, and you hear people writing about it. You hear them having like euphoric experiences at these things, which is just the feedback building more and more and more and
Wow.
more. It's really something else. It's called.
Um,
You should look it up and read about it. It's called "The
yeah,
Wolf Man." Is his piece.
I've
It's
lost
really
my
amazing.
pencil. I was gonna write that down.
That reminds me of Alvin Lucer. What's his
There
name?
it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know, I've
Lucier.
heard
Yeah,
that name.
Yeah, the guy that does the "I am sitting in a room." I like that piece. That's cool.
yeah. So whereas that one ends up being just the resonant frequencies of the room, Wolfman is like this ear split. By 5 minutes in, it's ear splitting. Like you can't even listen to it anymore, and it's just more and more and more and build, build,
Wow.
build, build.
What's the guy's name?
Robert Ashley.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up. When I was in college the first time, was certainly when all the weirdness was being encouraged in composition classes, and they had a very nice electronic music studio at Greensboro, and I did do some kind of experimental stuff that I still have the tapes of. Um, and same when Dr. Whitfield was in school, I've heard some of his tapes too.
He's teaching music tech right now, and I always rub him to say, bring those things in and show them. And he's like, I've tried it a couple times, and the students just like look at me bored out of their minds. Yeah.
The room's so empty now.
Yeah. Well, the equipment now is so different. You know, the things that you could do would be different than the things you could do back then. I don't know if not necessarily better or worse, but certainly different. I think encouraging experimentation. Uh,
Yeah, he pretty much said that the things that would be interesting to us being a little older and having read about the fumblings with technology in the 60s and 70s and 80s, like
mhm.
that stuff is so fascinating to us, but someone who's not been born without a cell phone in the hand already, it's just kind of like, well, you know, I don't really care about your Neanderthal, you know, behavior back then in the 70s. It's like,
Right. Yeah, you made a tape loop. I can do that with my cell phone.
what's a tape? You know, they have even the
Right.
idea
Well,
of
yeah.
splicing, saying the word splice and
Yeah.
tape, and like they don't see that those actually came from physical. Like Dr. Whitfield sometimes shows them, it's like you had to take scissors and you splice something, you cut it.
Yes. Um, and one of the Beatles songs, I'm trying to remember which one it is, maybe you'll know. At the very end of it, there's this sort of fluttery musical effect that they achieved by taking a recording of a calliope and just cutting it up into a bunch of little pieces and taping it all back together at random. And when they played it, that's what's on the album at the end of this song. And it's really cool, and I don't know how else you would get that effect.
Well, I guess we can go ahead and start then. It's 10:04. If anybody will join in, then they'll just join in. So if anyone has anything they want to share first. Anybody want to go first? All right, I have something that I can share before. It's really short. Okay, so I finally started working on that vocal piece I talked about. but I have had zero motivation to do any writing for like the past like week and a half, and I finally started like a couple of days ago because for marching band techniques, we're taking these hymns and orchestrating them for a marching band, and I found this hymn that my grandma really liked. It was like her favorite song. It's called Sweet Beulah Land. And I was like, oh, that'd be really cool if I did a piece kind of like that was inspired off that. So the only thing I took from it is the first rhythm and like the pickup measure that it has, but everything else is like mine. Let me see if I can show the screen. Okay, so just that soprano part, that's the only thing I took from it, and it's in the same key. Okay, that's not that one. Yeah, it's just something I was trying to find like something to do at the end, but I just finished this like 30 minutes ago, so I'm not really sure. And I also had Jaren look over it to make sure I wasn't breaking any part writing rules, and he didn't seem to see anything.
Quote me on that.
Yeah, that's all I have so far.
Are you going to extend this to the whole song and make it into an arrangement of Beulah Land?
No, it's not going to be an arrangement. It's like an original piece that is just inspired by Beulah
Okay.
Land.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Bishop, if it's original piece inspired by Beulah Land, will it have text?
Yeah, I think I want to put text to it, but I'm not really sure what yet because I haven't really thought about that.
Well,
I'm
your decision then to write before having a text. It's not like that can't be done that way. But
Mhm.
fitting a text to music that's already written is not easy, and it often sounds stilted and where you have accents on wrong syllables and things like this. Like if you try to just randomly, you just take any text you know already and then just try to sing it to what you have written, and you'll find that it's kind of hard. So I guess I would encourage you to have to consider working the other way, not necessarily stop now and find the text. It's like if you get inspired, keep writing and stuff, but just beware that fitting a text after the fact, and maybe the other composers in the group can disagree with me, but I've always found that being way harder than coming into it with the idea of a text. I'll like read a line in my head a couple times, and then it's like, oh wow, this melody would work really well for that line, and I go and I write that melody in, as opposed to I love this melody, and now I have to figure out a word that's going to, or a phrase that's going to fit the melody. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize, but I also have another question. When you are writing your 4 parts, are you thinking at all in terms of triads and 7th chords, or are you thinking horizontal melodies in each line, and however they line up, they line up?
Mainly just horizontally, but I do think about like what I have and where it's gonna go. Like, you know what I mean?
because there are certainly moments like you're beginning with "I'm kinda homesick," like that the little thing you stole from the actual real Beulah Land beginning. You know, you have this A flat major chord that's voiced just like an A flat major chord is mostly voiced, you know, in most common practice harmonies, and your whole hymn book, you know, it's perfect. Your two roots and a third and a fifth, you know, and if you even look ahead two measures, you know, you have the sense of a five chord and you know an E flat chord, but it's got an E flat and then it's got three thirds in it. So what you're doing is you're having some semblance of traditional harmonic practice at the same time as moments of very modern ways of notating chords and progressions that don't follow your average everyday run-of-the-mill ones in a hymn book. You know, hymn books are going to have ones to fours and fours to fives. You know, they're not going to have some of the stranger movements that you have. And so that's why I was kind of curious what your thought process was, because if you're trying to emulate something versus trying to go off in your own direction, it's like both of those things are totally awesome. I just would want you to make sure that you have a sense in your mind of, okay, this is what I'm shooting for. I'm actually shooting for not common practice harmony at all, just the notes of A flat major roughly with whatever happens, versus thinking, oh, you know, I actually probably want to go from a one chord to a four chord and then the four chord to a two chord. And I have to like actually think about how many thirds do I have in each chord, or do I have parallel octaves and parallel fifths? You know, all of that stuff that you learn in theory. You don't have to bring in theory to your composition. Absolutely, you don't have to. But if you try to write in the style of something, well, then you need some of that theory background to make sure that your music actually sounds like it's in that style. Do you kind of see where I'm what I'm trying to hint at here?
Yeah.
Either way is fine. You just, you know, have a goal and stick to it. And if your goal is to write in common practice harmony, well, then someone needs to take some red markers to some of your voicings, because it's like, well, maybe you have too much third here or not enough, you know, this and that, those types of conversations. But if you'd rather say, yeah, actually, I'm not trying to write in common practice, well, then it's a free for all, and it really, you know, you don't have to abide by that set of like traditional rules, so to speak, that you're learning in class.
Yeah. Okay.
It's an interesting piece. I like it. I think it definitely deserves exploration.
Yeah. Like kind of going off what Dr. Moser said, I think I would like to have it more on the traditional side with like that hint of spice, if you would say, if you want to say that. But
that's a great way to put it. And you're going to have so much practice with that, Bishop, when you get to more theory. It's like you know, this is great for you to mess around with this, and then when you get a little bit more under your belt, you'll go back maybe and revisit this and say, oh well, I see here, if I had done this, that would have actually made it sound a little bit more like what I'm used to in a church setting with a choir or something. And then you'll know how to add spice on top of that, as opposed to the other way around. So yeah, I mean, you just, here's a thumb up for getting through theory 2, getting through theory 3. Like you'll really hone those skills of 4-part voice leading for sure, because that's so much of the content of those chords.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to say? Oh, well, here's Dr. Whitfield. I can play my piece again if you want, Dr. Whitfield. It's pretty short.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that end part is bad. I'm gonna change that.
Well, I don't know that it's bad. It just sounds like it's going someplace else.
Yeah. Well, like I don't know why I can't hear like the alto or like the tenor. I just kind of hear just bass on that last chord, and I don't know why.
Go to your
It,
mixer.
it's an octave thing. It's that the low D flat has both the tenor and the alto in its harmonic series. This is why we try to
Hmm.
stay away from parallel octaves. And so you have this
Okay.
triple D flat right there that you're
Hmm.
not going to be able to hear that voice very well. You're going to hear this mammoth bass voice because it's the other voices are singing the harmonics of that big bass voice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Something that will also help is if you'll go to Window and Mixer, um, and I would put the soprano and the bass in the middle and pan the alto and tenor 90 degrees out. Soprano bass, I said tenor. Soprano, yeah, soprano bass right up the middle
Hmm.
because they're far apart. And pan the alto and tenor side to side. And that will, I think, help you hear the separation. And also, it looks like you may need to play with the levels a little bit.
Hmm.
But you'll have to go back and listen to them one at a time and, just play with those settings until you get to where you can hear them evenly and can tell them apart.
Okay.
You could also put dynamic markings in there. Uh, Sometimes finale almost doesn't know how to react to not
Hmm.
having dynamic markings.
Okay.
What is this? Is this supposed to be a choral thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's it's inspired by Sweet Beulah Land, if you've ever heard that.
I don't know.
Uh, here, I can link it in the chat whenever I'm done with this. But yeah.
So there's lyrics. There will be lyrics.
Eventually. Yeah.
Okay. So those eighth notes in the fourth measure in the soprano, will they be like
Hmm.
a melisma or a? I'm just wondering how the syllables will.
Yeah. Well, Dr.
Yeah,
Moser said something about earlier
okay.
that because he was talking about how it's harder. Well, he thinks it's harder to write music first and then lyrics.
Yeah.
Hmm. But yeah, I eventually want lyrics to this. All right.
Well, you can always change your rhythms a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
match your lyrics when you get them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would agree that it's easier to have the lyrics first,
Mm-hmm.
but I know one of Dr. Whitfield's favorite things to tell me when I was stumped is Billy Joel writes the music first, and his songs turn out great.
Yeah, there's always some odd person out there that does things backwards, but they seem to be that's how they think, and it
Mm-hmm.
works for them, but that doesn't mean it works for the majority, though.
All right. Thank you.
Just got finished talking about medieval isorhythms in music history, and at least a couple of our folks on this call remember how the lyrics of those isorhythms get crammed into whatever the rhythm is that the isorhythm is forcing it to be. And it doesn't take long until the Renaissance say, you know, enough of this garbage. Let's actually try to make the text sound natural. Let's not, you know, splice it all up and make it follow whatever rhythms that the isorhythm is saying. And so it's interesting, Bishop, that you know, 500 years ago we're still fighting the same, like, rhythm first, text first, music first. Like, what do we do? Like, there's nothing new under the sun in music. The same issues that you're having to think about with text or music first now were fought over in the 1400s.
And then there were the motets with the different languages and different lyrics in every voice.
Anybody else got anything that they want to share?
What? Nothing, Caleb?
Hey, I've always got something I can show.
Oh, I know. That's
Yeah, we've been doing a mass for 2 weeks. Let's hear. Yeah, you didn't. I don't even think you did anything last.
Let's see. I'll go there. Okay. See if I can get this to work. All right, so I already showed Dr. Moser this piece a while ago, but it's just a piece I was trying to. I don't think I've shown it here. If I have, then someone please stop me. I might be going crazy. But it was me trying to attempt at like doing polytonality and stuff. It ends up not really sounding very much like polytonality. It ends up just kind of sounding like the key of D, but with some funky other notes inside of it. Anyways, let me know if, when y'all hear it, okay?
Yeah.
So that's it.
I really like the eighth note thing. It's a couple measures before 30. Yeah, that right there, like 23. I like that.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite thing to write because it was just I never experimented with something like that before. I have since then a little bit, but just the actual articulation is there. You know, making them 16th notes instead of 8th notes.
Okay. Yeah, Caleb. I mean, I think it sounds cool, and I like the rhythms and all, but it's not bitonal.
Yeah, I would agree.
With the reason being that when it's bitonal, you would want your lower instrument, your cello and viola, to be separated from the first and second violin. You want to give the first and second violin the two sharps, and you want to give the viola and the cello the two flats, or the other way around. But there's a spatial thing there where you have the one key has its own range and area, and then there's a little space in there between, and then the other key has above that its own range and its own area, so that they're not on top of each other. Then you can hear the bitonality. Then you can hear this is in this key. This way, it's dissonant and it's interesting, and yeah, you've got two sharps and some of the instruments and two flats in the other, but it doesn't come off as bitonal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you learn something new every day, I suppose. It makes sense having them spaced out in different voicings or different, the high ones being in one key, the low one being the other one.
I mean, it doesn't have to be like a super great amount, but
but I don't know. It does make sense. I just hadn't thought of it that way. And I like I said, I was just experimenting and
sure.
The beach. And I was at the beach, and
And it's good to experiment.
Yeah, I'd spent the whole week playing video games because we can't really do anything at the beach, and we went out to the ocean a couple times. But
you can go out and try to catch sharks.
We could have probably. There were some around there. I'm pretty sure. So I was just kind of like, I need to do something that's actually productive. So I decided to do this thing, and I was just like, it's probably not going to really sound like bitonality, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like,
I mean, you just don't call it bitonal, and
it's just a matter of the name and what you call it.
Yeah.
So much of the stuff that when we get to some of Stravinsky, we're going to be able to dissect it and say, oh, there are three different instruments here in three different keys all at the same time. But you wouldn't call it bi or tritonality or something when he's not specifically giving them their areas. He's just using it as a way of writing very interesting dissonances. And so the music is fascinating. You just don't call it a certain name, and so if you want to write something bitonal, Dr. Whitfield's right that the kind of your goal will be that can the listener perceive two different tonal areas at the same time, as opposed to perceiving this, which sounds like we're all together and we're awesome dissonant, and that's good, and it's fine. It's just not, oh, I hear something two sharps. Oh, I hear something two flats, right? It's harder to perceive. I mean, there could be some really good ears out there that listen to that immediately and are like, oh, I see what he did there, but I don't know. I'm with you in our first hearing that it kind of sounds a little bit like it stays in one key of D with some interesting accidentals. That's my favorite part that we're looking at right here. This whole page.
Yeah, that was pretty unexpected. And the page immediately before, I was hearing this almost fugal buildup here in the last four measures. It's like, oh, well, I wonder what he's going to do with that. And then it just splits up in a really weird, interesting way. But then you come back out of it into something really harmonious. Another shock. So it's really nice.
well, thank you. This page right here, this page 3, this stuff right here is pretty much I kind of heard this type of stuff in my head, especially the what the build-ups. I heard some of it, but especially the like the voice exchanging between the violin two and the viola, or I guess not the voice, but the what I'm saying, with the moving there. It's kind of what along with this little motive, the da 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 da. Kind of heard that, and that's what gave me the inspiration to write the piece, and so.
Well, that brings up a question I have. You said you you just heard it in your head, which that's a good place to hear it. But were there any? Can you think about it and trace perhaps any influences, like other pieces you've heard, or composers, famous or not, that influenced this, or is it, as far as you know, pretty much just entirely original?
Well, as Dr. Moser and I have talked about before, generally with anything I write, you can find at least trace back somewhere to some video game or something. Generally, there's something that'll that came from that. I feel like especially this section right here probably came from it's this game series called Dragon Quest, and
Yeah.
there's music that sounds similar to this. I think that kind of came from that.
So you're saying that like all these obscure video games that none of us knows, I mean, you're just totally ripping off all of this, and we just haven't heard it before. You're just copying it word for word.
So as long as no one ever catches me, I'll be okay. Yeah.
One of the things, Caleb, I always learn from your when you share your scores with us, or you send them to me, I'm always intrigued and very, very pleased with your use of rhythm. Rhythm is one of those areas that we don't talk too much about, and I'm totally guilty of that. I'm a theory teacher that spends so much time with harmony, and I don't spend as much time with rhythm, talking about its effects and what you can do with it as I should. And your pieces are a breath of fresh air with the variety and rhythms that you employ, and employ them well. And my only encouragement would be that when you do have a really cool rhythm that you use somewhere early on in some very motivic section or thematic section, that you reuse it too, and that you may you use a rhythmic motive just like you would a thematic motive with pitches, and you do some of that in here too. I think I just encourage you to do it more, that you have a good grasp of rhythm, and I think there will be a lot of string quartets that would like that. Like this would be just one of those really fun things to get together and read, and lots of dialogue between the two, between all of them, frankly. And that's exactly what string quartets love, that they're all kind of treated equally, and you don't have the poor cello holding a long pitch while the violin and violin two get everything cool, and the viola and cello are kind of boring. It's like, I mean, this is like four people all equal. It's great.
Well, and that's another place I got a ton of inspiration from. I'm not sure why I mentioned Dragon Quest first. Now I'm thinking about it, but I started listening to a couple weeks before, or really the week before this. We were moving, so we were cleaning up our entire house and everything. And I would spend a lot of time doing gardening there, trying to get the outside part looking neat. And I would listen to music while I did it. And when I listened to, generally I listened to some type of Beethoven, generally his string quartets and stuff. And I really, actually, the eighth notes here with the slashes on them, I never actually seen that before until I was looking at the score for the Grosse Fuga. I said that right. And I really like the way that when you listen to it, they're like you were saying, with like all the especially the rhythmic motives. You find a lot of that even in his stuff. And I really wanted to try to bring out this da 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 da, kind of the.
If you're going to use the Grosse Fuga as your model for string quartet writing, you could aim a lot lower. Like that's pretty darn good.
Well, I don't like to compare myself to Beethoven ever, but think I was playing something I wrote, and Dad was like, my dad said, he said, "Oh, that's better than anything I've ever heard by Beethoven." I was like, "You don't blaspheme like that. Don't you be, don't you be saying things like that. I can't."
Well, if you want some more influence as far as string quartet writing, listen to some Bartok string quartets, and you'll get the dissonance part of it that you're incorporating here in that, but
And the rhythm.
and the rhythm, yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and stop sharing. But thanks for all that input. I'll definitely listen to some Bartok string quartets, though, for sure.
Anyone else? No.
We were talking about the old experimental stuff, really before we got started, and I have one of those pieces on the computer that I did with tape. If you want to hear it, it's about not quite 5.5 minutes long, but I promise you it's different.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. This is the machine I made it on. And the main body of this here is in the Moog Museum in Asheville. This whole bit here. And my professor, well, one of the professors up there, Dr. Hunkins, I think he's still alive even, built all of this stuff on top here from kits. So, and you can see the corner of a tape machine here, and what this piece is it's a monophonic. I had rigged up this monophonic sound and played it on that keyboard you see under there, and had two tape recorders side by side, and recorded the tape on one, played it back on the other, and had it looped through the mixer board so it echoed. And at the beginning, I had the tape running on high speed, and this is all improvised. This was all done in one take. And as I started to run out of tape, I thought, oh no, I don't want to stop this now. So I flipped the switch and ran the tape recorder down to its slowest speed, so the echoes are way far apart. And suddenly the piece is just entirely different. And the whole bit of it is, it's built on the echoes created by the tape. So I think the interesting thing about the way it came out is you almost can't tell it's done with a monophonic instrument. And you know what I have done? That's the end of the song. So is that. Okay, hold on. Are you guys not hearing this? You're
No.
not hearing it. Okay.
No.
All right. So never mind. I won't take up any more of your time with it. Sorry about that. I thought it was playing the music.
Well, I want to hear it maybe next week if at the end or something. Especially if you can. I think it's just a sharing the computer
Yeah.
audio setting first.
Yeah, I think I didn't
But-
hit that button,
That's all
which
right.
I can if you.
So we still got time.
Yeah, I'm game.
Okay. All right. So tell me if you can hear it. Are you hearing it?
Yes.
Okay. So that was it. That's playing around in the music studio.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool.
You could certainly hear where it slowed down. But, you know, if you hadn't told us, we wouldn't known the story there. What happened? Running out of tape. Wonder how many other pieces from that era had the same issue where they were worried about running out of tape. So that influenced what they did.
And at the end where the pitch speeds up, that's where the last bit of tape came off the roll and it was just feeding through the system with no resistance on it.
I wondered about that. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. A
Yeah.
physical reason why the pitch kind of went up a little bit sharper.
I saw it was about to run out. I had managed to bring it to some sort of a cadence conclusion, and I just stopped playing and let it echo until it stopped. But that end, I mean, you could tell I was just adding one note. Every time it cycled through, I would just play another note. Anyway, fun stuff to play with. It'd be easy to do in GarageBand, probably, and a keyboard. I thought the interesting thing with this technology was just the textures. So anyway, I think I was 18 when I did that, maybe 19.
The things, though, that you would think to do, the medium that you're using or the technology, the instruments influence that. So you probably could do that like on GarageBand, but would you think to do that? Whereas, with the tape and the hardware of that era, that sort of led you down a certain paths, because of, you just told the story there, a testimony to that.
And we tend to remember those composers that despite the tools that despite the normal way that the tools at their disposal are being used by most people, they find a way to use them in a slightly different way, more creative way, something, and then they're in the history books and we talk about them 100 years later. Like, it's just funny how that works. And so what is it that GarageBand is allowing the regular average old Joe to do that we composers need to find something different, that like, oh, no one ever thought about using it in this way, and then now we're in the history books.
Yeah, even Finale, it's so obviously programmed to do what we all use it for. If
Right.
what could you make it do that was weird? I've not thought of, not tried that.
That really came into high relief, this idea when Christian came back from spending all that time with Hans Zimmer, and how they were only using Logic and they were only using it in a very particular way, and it's influencing the melodies they're writing because they're only writing melodies with one hand because the other hand's on a mouse, and like you're starting to see the tools of the trade have a direct impact on the sound. We artists, we thinkers need to step back from that and say, what is this doing to us, and where can we find a niche in here where we're using the same tools that they're using, but not in the same way.
Yeah, I think as composers, we need to be looking for those innovative ways to use the tools we're presented with.
And on the other hand, Hans Zimmer and his ilk, I don't really mean that negatively, but they're commercial. They're trying to please the masses, so they're not going to be overly looking for new ways to do things. The same old ways are making them lots of money.
And it's too late in our hour to get into discussion about this, but you can almost see the dividing line in history of when making music turned into making music for the masses, and then you find those composers that could bridge the gap between making artistic statements and yet still statements that the the popular public, the public still wanted to hear. We didn't have this divide between art music and pop music. Not even 200 years ago, we didn't. So it's just everyone before 200 years ago, you still were trying to make artistic statements at the same time as doing something that appealed to the public audience, because it was still ticket sales that was driving your success in the early 1800s opera. It's just interesting, a lot of interesting discussions to not have with 3 minutes left for another day.
Yeah, I see reading blogs by people like Bear McCreary that if nothing else, they're looking for weird new things to use for instruments. In the first Star Trek movie, they made an instrument. I don't know who came up with this idea, but they welded together a square aluminum tube and filled it half full of water and rolled it around and played it with a violin bow.
Yeah. Well, if you're trying to, right, you're making a film about the future, science fiction film about the future. What kinds of new sounds and instruments will they have in the future? So that makes a lot of sense. To do
That's
something.
where the entire electronic music got its legs, because immediately sci-fi started to realize, wow, these sounds are unlike any instruments that we've ever heard before. We need to put this in a movie with some big spaceship landing or something like that, because it sounds out of this world, because it totally was in the 50s. I mean, no one had ever heard any instruments like that before. And here now we don't have sci-fi and horror without those very dissonant, very electronic sounds.
Forbidden Planet is a good example if you've never seen that movie.
It is the textbook example that they'll get next semester. And John Cage's friends were the ones that wrote the score to that. So it's a way I can still tip my cap to John Cage, who was totally in on all that.
Cool.
All right. I think that about ends our meeting. So I guess we'll see everybody next week. See ya.